Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're delving into a true landmark of Spanish language literature, 100 Years of Solitude by the unforgettable Gabriel García Márquez. This novel is so much more than just a book. It's a cultural touchstone that has shaped generations in the Spanish-speaking world and, well, far beyond.
Absolutely.
Just think about it for a second. Recognized by the International Congress of the Spanish Language, hailed as one of the best novels of the 20th century by El Mundo and Le Monde, and even included on the Norwegian Book Club's prestigious list of the 100 best books of all time. And the numbers, they're just staggering. Over 30 million copies sold and translated into an incredible 44 languages.
It really is extraordinary, isn't it, how a single literary creation can achieve that kind of global resonance. For this dive, you shared excerpts from a PDF document analyzing the novel and also snippets from the original text itself. Our goal today is to explore together those essential aspects that make 100 Years of Solitude such an enduring and significant read.
Exactly. And just to give you some context, this monumental work took shape over 18 intense months of writing between 1965 and 1966 in Mexico City. Its first publication was in Buenos Aires, May 1967, by the publisher Sudamericana, and right from the start, it just captivated readers everywhere.
hmm
Interestingly, the initial spark came from a trip Garcia Marquez took to his hometown, Aracataca, back in '52 with his mother. And he'd already planted the seed for this universe in his first novel, Leaf Storm, mentioning the mythical Macondo for the very first time.
What's also intriguing is the journey to publication. Initially, Carlos Barral at Sakesborough didn't quite see the potential. But after Editorial Sudamericana accepted it under Francisco Purro's vision, well, history took a different course. It's important to remember, too, that Garcia Marquez dedicated the book to his friends Yomi Garcia Ascot and Maria Luisa Elio, who gave him crucial support while he was writing in Mexico.
Right, that dedication is key. And we can't forget the commemorative edition from 2007, a beautiful tribute from the Royal Spanish Academy and the Association of Academies of the Spanish Language, celebrating Garcia Marquez's 80th birthday and the book's 40th anniversary. By then, estimates put the number of editions over 100 and sales past 50 million copies.
Wow, 50 million. Incredible.
So essentially, 100 Years of Solitude plunges us into the fascinating multi-generational story of the Buendía family in the fictional town of Macondo, spanning 7 generations.
That's right. And right at the beginning of this family saga, we encountered the founding of Macondo by José Arcadio Buendía. The novel presents the village in its early days as this small, orderly, surprisingly happy place, with carefully planned streets and easy river access. His wife, Ursula Iguaran, plays this absolutely crucial role in the household's stability and function. Then shortly after, as you probably remember from the excerpts, the gypsies arrive, bringing these wondrous inventions that just ignite José Arcadio Buendía's imagination, like Melquiades and his famous magnet.
Oh yeah, picture that scene. José Arcadio Buendía, totally captivated by the magnet's power, launches this relentless search for gold, even dredging the riverbed. But instead of riches, what he finds is this 15th century suit of armor, completely rusted and hollow, with a calcified skeleton inside, still holding a locket with a curl of woman's hair. This early episode, don't you think,
Yeah.
already shows that classic contrast in the novel between wild ambition and finding something completely unexpected.
Absolutely. And Ursula's character is just as remarkable in those early days. She's described as a woman of boundless energy and nerves of steel, always active, keeping the home in perfect order. It's thanks to her diligence and, well, tenacity that Macondo starts to solidify as this prosperous, organized village where, interestingly, nobody is over 30, and death seems like an unknown visitor in the beginning.
But that apparent utopia you're describing, right? It gets threatened when Rebecca arrives in town. Unfortunately, she brings with her this terrible plague of insomnia and, like a dark shadow, the inevitable plague of forgetting. It's a really fascinating sequence in the excerpts you read, how simply not being able to sleep leads to memory loss, forcing the townspeople to take desperate measures to avoid just fading into oblivion.
It's quite something. What's so poignant, as you likely noticed in the texts, is the community's struggle against that gradual loss of identity. They go to the extreme of labeling every single object with its name, trying to cling to memories. But even that method fails when they forget how to read the labels. It's then that Melquiades returns from the dead, an event itself infused with that characteristic magic, bringing a mysterious drink that promises to restore memory, and those enigmatic parchments whose meaning won't be revealed until much, much later.
And amidst this fight against forgetting and these, extraordinary events you're describing, some of the novel's central themes start to emerge, themes you probably spotted in your sources, like the profound difficulty many characters have with loving and their marked tendency towards isolation.
Right.
So many of them get trapped in solitude, either because of their own inability to form genuine connections or because of the prejudices and barriers they put up themselves. However, the relationship between Aureliano Babylonia and Amaranta Ursula really stands out as a union based on intense love, although, as you'll remember, it ends tragically.
What's particularly significant about that relationship, and it resonates with the prophecy hanging over the whole story, is that the child they conceive, born from that deep love, is born with a pig's tail and ends up being devoured by ants. This fulfills the curse of 100 years of solitude and marks the end of the Buendía line. The theme of incest, which originates with the marriage between the cousins José Arcadio Buendía and Ursula, and that recurring fear of a child being born with a pig's tail, is a constant element, underlining the cyclical and, in a way, predestined fate of the Buendías. Even the marriage of José Arcadio, the son, to the adopted Rebecca causes huge controversy and family tension, as you saw.
Yeah. All this stuff we're talking about, the appearance of the bizarre as something everyday, it leads us straight to the heart of magical realism, which, as you know, is the very essence of 100 Years of Solitude. Garcia Marquez saw this novel as the ultimate expression of this particular literary style, where the extraordinary is presented as completely natural within the narrative reality, without causing astonishment or strangeness in the characters.
It's crucial to understand, to fully appreciate the novel, the distinction Garcia Marquez himself makes. In magical realism, the unusual is perceived as an intrinsic part of reality, creating a sense of wonder and fascination in the reader rather than terror or disbelief, unlike traditional fantasy literature. This also contrasts, though there are overlaps, with more conventional European realism and with the concept of the marvelous real proposed by the Cuban writer Alejo Carpentier, which explores the uniqueness of Latin American reality from a different angle.
Okay, that makes sense. And to enrich this immersion in Macondo's universe even further, Garcia Marquez uses this amazing array of literary devices that beautify and add depth to his prose. We find examples of oxymoron, like in the powerful description quagmire of rotting stumps, chimero de cepas putrefactas, synesthesia, like the delicate image, delicate wind of light, delicado viento de luz, anaphora, with the moving repetition, the dead men, los muertos hombres. Similarly, like when he precisely describes Amaranta Ursula slowly closed her fingers like a shellfish. Amaranta Ursula fue cerrando los dedos como un molusco. An epiphonema, that final phrase encapsulating a deep reflection like the memorable. Colonel Aureliano Buendía scarcely understood that the secret of a good old age is simply an honorable pact with solitude.
The setting in Macondo is another fundamental pillar of the novel. This fictional town, as you probably know, is a faithful reflection of Garcia Marquez's childhood Aracataca on Colombia's Caribbean coast. The way time is presented in the novel, not linearly, but rather fluid, cyclical, and yet eternal, along with prose that evokes the cadence and musicality of oral tradition, significantly contributes to that mythical, foundational atmosphere that characterizes magical realism, and that you surely perceived in the fragments.
Going back to Macondo's origins we mentioned earlier, we see Ursula's strong determination to stay in the village, despite José Arcadio Buendía's impulsive, almost quixotic desire to strike out on new paths. We also witness the first romantic entanglements and passions emerging in the community, like the relationship between José Arcadio, the son, and the enigmatic Pilar Ternera, and his subsequent sudden departure with the gypsies, leaving her behind. The news of Ursula's return, bringing not just new stories but also unknown objects and inventions, marks another important moment in the community's early development.
And precisely with Ursula's return, the latent threat of forgetting is reintroduced into the narrative, this time carried by some innocent animal-shaped candies sold in town, insidiously spreading the plague of insomnia and the resulting devastating collective memory loss. The description of how the inhabitants cleverly fight this amnesia, resorting to labeling every object, and Malchieri's providential arrival offering a cure, are key moments we've already touched on that illustrate that mix of the ordinary and the extraordinary.
Right, the labeling, yeah. Then, not long after, the arrival of Don Apolinar Moscote as the magistrate represents the imposition of external authority from the world beyond Macondo's borders. Initially, José Arcadio Buendía strongly resists this figure representing the central government, defending his foundation's autonomy. However, they eventually reach a pragmatic agreement regarding house colors and the withdrawal of soldiers, showing a kind of forced adaptation to the new reality. It's interesting to note, even at this early stage, the early fascination Aureliano feels for the young Remedios Moscote.
The social and romantic dynamics in Macondo get even more intricate with the arrival of Pietro Crespi, a refined character who profoundly impacts the lives of the young Rebecca and Amaranta. The piano lessons he gives and the blossoming engagement between Pietro and Rebecca are unexpectedly thwarted by the intervention of the passionate and conflicted Amaranta, who also harbors complex feelings for the same man. Parallel to these dramas, Aureliano experiences an unwanted encounter with the experienced Pilar Ternera and starts developing feelings for the sweet Remedios Moscote.
Then the outbreak of war marks a dramatic turning point in Macondo's history and, of course, in the Buendía family's destiny. We witness the meteoric rise of Colonel Aureliano Buendía, a central character whose involvement in the conflicts and the decisions he makes will have far-reaching and lasting consequences for generations. Ursula's emotional visit to her son in prison and his heartbreaking request that she burn his poetry reveal the complexity of their mother-son bond and the depth of the ideals driving him to fight.
Although an armistice is eventually reached, a process in which Colonel Generaldo Márquez plays a significant role, the war leaves an indelible scar on Macondo and on the souls of its inhabitants. Aureliano José, for example, falls hopelessly in love with his aunt Amaranta, and they maintain a secret, forbidden relationship that ends tragically with his death in the war. The deep disillusionment Colonel Aureliano Buendía experiences after the conflict leads him to obsessively craft tiny goldfish, a repetitive act that perhaps symbolizes the futility of his struggles and the loss of his ideals.
And Colonel Aureliano Buendía's offspring expands in a rather peculiar and numerous way. He fathers 17 sons with different women, and they all share the name Aureliano. Meanwhile, Macondo starts undergoing significant changes with the arrival of the powerful banana company, bringing with it a growing foreign influence that will radically transform the life and customs of the previously isolated town.
The banana company? That's a huge shift. In her advanced old age, despite progressive physical decline and eventual blindness, Ursula achieves surprising mental clarity. Her perspective on her family members transforms, becomes deeper. She comes to understand Colonel Aureliano Buendía's profound inability to love and discovers the tenderness hidden beneath Amaranta's sometimes harsh exterior. Even her affection for the once conflicted Rebecca renews and intensifies in her final years.
The changes in the Buendía family continue with Mime's departure to boarding school, where she forms a secret, passionate relationship with Mauricio Babylonia. This romance, when discovered, provokes a severe, disproportionate reaction from her mother, Fernanda, ending with Mime's cruel confinement. At the same time, José Arcadio leaves for the seminary in Rome seeking a religious calling, and the young, ambitious Amaranta Ursula sets off for Brussels to continue her studies, marking a scattering of the new Buendía generation onto different paths.
But destiny, capricious and cyclical as we've seen throughout the Buendía story, brings them back to Macondo. Amaranta Ursula returns to the family home, accompanied by her Belgian husband, Gaston, and they settle into the Buendía mansion, which by then shows clear signs of decay and deterioration. Aureliano, meanwhile, remains immersed in his obsessive task of trying to decipher Melchides' enigmatic parchments while developing an increasingly intimate and close relationship with his aunt, Amaranta Ursula.
And finally, we reach the climax of the story in the long-awaited revelation. Aureliano discovers he is the last living descendant of the Buendía line and, in a momentous event, finally manages to completely decipher the ancient parchments. They reveal the entire history of his family and of Macondo itself, including the intrinsically cyclical nature of their fate and the final prophecy of their annihilation by a voracious plague of ants.
Wow.
The birth of Amaranta Ursula's son with the feared pig's tail and his tragic end mark the definitive fulfillment of the curse, the end of the Buendía line, and the irrevocable disappearance of the mythical town of Macondo.
So in summary, this deep dive into 100 Years of Solitude has given us the chance to explore themes as universal and profound as love and solitude, the cyclical and relentless nature of history, the fascinating and sometimes bewildering mix of reality and magic, and the inevitable tragic fate of the Buendía family and their iconic Macondo.
Without a doubt, this novel remains a cornerstone of not just Latin American, but world literature. We invite you to reflect on its enduring impact and the multiple layers of meaning hidden within its pages.
Now, for all of you listening in the Spanish-speaking world, we have a very special invitation. We encourage you to click the link you'll find right below in the video description so you can enjoy a completely free audiobook thanks to your Audible subscription. It's an incredible opportunity you shouldn't miss to immerse yourselves even further in the fascinating world of literature.
And if you found this deep dive into 100 Years of Solitude interesting and enriching, please don't forget to subscribe to our show so you won't miss future literary explorations.
To wrap up, one last thought that might stick with you. Perhaps the true magic of 100 Years of Solitude lies not just in the extraordinary events it recounts, but in the profoundly human struggles of its characters to find connection and understanding in a world shaped by both wonder and isolation. What resonated most with you or made you think about the story of the Buendias?